The champagne had lost its sparkle hours ago, but Marcus Chen didn't care. He stood alone on the balcony of his penthouse, watching the city lights blur through 30 floors of privilege, wondering why success felt so much like drowning. At 42, he had everything the American dream promised: the portfolio, the properties, the cars that cost more than most people's houses, and absolutely nothing that mattered. His reflection in the glass looked like a stranger wearing an expensive suit. He walked back inside, loosening his tie, when he heard it. A soft shuffling sound coming from down the hallway, from his bedroom. Marcus froze. His security system was state-of-the-art, his building virtually impenetrable. Yet someone was in his home, in his most private space. His hand moved toward his phone, ready to dial 911, but something made him hesitate. The sound wasn't threatening. It was almost timid. Heart-pounding, Marcus moved silently down the hallway, each step deliberate on the Italian marble floors. The bedroom door stood slightly ajar, a sliver of light spilling into the dimness. He pushed it open slowly, prepared for anything. What he saw made him stop breathing. A woman, maybe 70 years old, stood beside his bed, carefully smoothing the corners of his sheets with trembling hands. Her cleaning uniform hung loose on her thin frame, and her weathered face was etched with concentration as she worked. She hadn't noticed him yet, too absorbed in making sure every wrinkle was eliminated, every pillow perfectly fluffed. "What are you doing here?" Marcus's voice came out sharper than he intended. The woman jumped, her hand flying to her chest. She turned toward him with wide, terrified eyes that immediately filled with tears. "Mr. Chen, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I needed—" Her voice broke and she swayed on her feet. Marcus instinctively stepped forward, catching her elbow. "Hey, easy. Just breathe. Sit down." He guided her to the chair by the window, his anger dissolving into concern. "Who are you?" "Rosa Martinez," she whispered, her accent thick with emotion. "I clean the offices in your building, 20th floor. I've worked there for 15 years. She looked down at her worn hands. "Tonight I came up here. I know I shouldn't have. I know it was wrong, but I was so desperate, and I thought maybe if I could just show you how hard I work." "Show me what?" "I don't understand." Rosa pulled a crumpled envelope from her pocket with shaking fingers. "This came yesterday. They're letting me go. Budget cuts, they said. At my age, nobody else will hire me." Tears rolled down her cheeks. "My granddaughter, Sophia, she's 12. Her mother, my daughter, she died 2 years ago. Cancer. Sophia lives with me now. She's so smart, Mr. Chen, so smart. But without this job, I don't know how I'll keep our apartment, how I'll feed her." Marcus felt something crack open inside his chest. He looked at this woman who had broken into his home not to steal, but to prove her worth by making his bed. "You came here to clean my bedroom, hoping I'd—" "What? Give you a job?" "I know it sounds crazy," Rosa said, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. "But I've seen you sometimes when I'm working late. You stay in your office until midnight, all alone. I thought maybe you'd understand what it means to work hard, to fight for what matters." She stood up abruptly. "But this was wrong. I'll go." "Please don't call the police. Sophia needs me." "Wait," Marcus held up his hand. Something in her words had struck a nerve he'd buried long ago. He walked to his closet and pulled out a box from the top shelf, one he hadn't opened in years. Inside were faded photographs, a worn apron, and a name tag that read, "Chen's Kitchen Staff, Linda." "This was my mother's," he said quietly, showing Rosa the name tag. "She was a dishwasher. Worked 3 jobs to keep me in school after my father left. I was 8. She'd come home at midnight with her hands red and raw from the industrial soap, but she'd still help me with my homework." He touched the faded plastic. "She died when I was 17. Heart attack. The doctors said it was from exhaustion." Rosa's expression softened with recognition and shared pain. "I built all of this, the companies, the money, everything, because I promised myself no one would ever look down on me the way people looked down on her." Marcus continued. "But somewhere along the way, I became exactly like them. I stopped seeing the people who cleaned my offices, who served my coffee, who made everything run while I took the credit." He looked directly at Rosa. "I'm sorry. You don't need to apologize to me," Rosa said gently. "Yes, I do. Marcus pulled out his phone. "What's your full name and your granddaughter's school?" Rosa's eyes widened with fear. "Please, I'll leave right now." "I won't. Rosa, I'm not calling the police. Just trust me for a minute." With trembling voice, she gave him the information. Marcus made 3 calls. First to his head of human resources, then to his personal attorney, then to someone Rosa couldn't identify. When he finished, he sat down across from her. "Here's what's going to happen," he said. "Starting Monday, you'll work directly for me. Not cleaning, I have a service for that. You'll help manage my charitable foundation. $75,000 a year. Full benefits and a schedule that lets you be there for Sophia. You'll help me identify families and individuals who need support, because you know better than I ever could what that looks like." Rosa stared at him, speechless. "I also just set up an education trust for Sophia. Full ride, preschool through graduate school. Whatever she wants to study. And I'm making a donation to every family that's being let go from your floor. 6 months' salary to help them transition." "Why?" Rosa whispered. "Why would you do this?" Marcus looked at his mother's name tag again. "Because 25 years ago, someone gave my mother an envelope just like the one you got. I watched the light go out in her eyes. She worked herself to death trying to survive after that." His voice cracked. "I can't bring her back. I can't give her the help she needed. But maybe I can make sure you don't have to make the same sacrifice. Maybe I can make sure Sophia doesn't lose you the way I lost my mom." Rosa covered her face with her hands and sobbed. Not the quiet, restrained crying from before, but deep, releasing waves of relief and gratitude. Marcus found himself crying, too, for the first time in years. For his mother. For all the Rosa Martinezes he'd walked past without seeing. For the humanity he'd almost lost chasing success. When they both composed themselves, Rosa stood and did something unexpected. She walked over and hugged him. This wealthy stranger she'd been desperate enough to approach. "Your mother would be so proud of you," she whispered. 2 months later, Marcus stood in the foundation's new office, watching Rosa train their staff on how to conduct interviews with dignity and respect. Sophia sat in the corner doing homework, occasionally looking up to smile at her grandmother. On Marcus's desk sat his mother's name tag in a small frame, next to a new photograph, him, Rosa, and Sophia at the foundation's opening. His assistant knocked on the door. "Mr. Chen, the Forbes interview is here. They want to know the secret to your success." Marcus glanced at Rosa, who was patiently explaining to a young staff member why it mattered, to ask people what they needed instead of assuming. "Tell them," he said, "that I was lost until someone showed me what I'd been missing. Tell them that real wealth isn't measured in what you have, but in what you give away and who you lift up." That night, as he drove home through the city, Marcus thought about the moment that changed everything. A desperate woman in his bedroom, smoothing his sheets with shaking hands, hoping that proof of her work ethic might save her granddaughter's future. He'd almost called the police. He'd almost destroyed both their lives with a single phone call. Instead, he'd opened his eyes and finally saw what his mother had tried to teach him all along, that every person has a story. Every struggle deserves compassion, and sometimes the greatest success comes not from what you achieve, but from the lives you touch when you choose kindness over judgment. The penthouse felt different now when he walked in. Less like a monument to isolation and more like a starting point, a place where he could rest before waking up to do more good tomorrow. And somewhere across the city, in a small apartment that was no longer at risk, a grandmother tucked her bright-eyed granddaughter into bed and whispered prayers of gratitude for the man who chose to see her humanity instead of her desperation. Marcus stood at his window again, looking out at the same city lights. But this time, he didn't feel like he was drowning. He felt, for the first time in years, like he was finally breathing.